Even in a bitterly divided America, we are united in grief after a senseless violence counts children among its victims. Yesterday, our hearts broke for those families whose loved ones, overwhelmingly small children, were targeted and massacred during a Catholic Mass marking the first week of school at the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The gunman, who took his own life, was intent on inflicting as much depravity as possible, literally barricading the church doors to prevent escape, then unloading countless rounds through stained glass windows as little children who moments earlier were saying their prayers suddenly hid under pews, crying out for help. Lives were lost yesterday and others seriously injured. They cling to life. There were stories of heroism of teachers, law enforcement and first responders, and the community leaping into action with compassion and generosity. There were revelations of a disturbed young man with access to guns and a trail of troubling signs. And of course, there were the obligatory thoughts and prayers from certain predictable officials that followed. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? But for others, and I suspect speaking for a healthy majority of this country, there was the resignation that all this somehow was now acceptable, unfortunate reality in modern America.
Do not think of these as just somebody else's kids. Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
The mayor is, of course, right. But down deep, isn't your sense that those heartfelt pleas will be met with the same inertia and political cowardice we've seen after almost every other mass shooting? Like many of you, I come to this story from a personal place. A dozen years ago, I remember dropping my then grade school-age kids off at parochial school, not dissimilar from Assumption. In the hours that followed, Sandy Hook Elementary School became the center of the world. Of the 26 innocents killed that day, 20 were 6- and 7-year-olds. Like with yesterday's tragedy, the shooter was an extremely young man, isolated, yet somehow able to avail himself to ungodly firepower. So heartbreaking was that chapter that politics for a moment took a backseat to common purpose. In the days that followed, we were presented with different paths forward. The head of the NRA was so tone-deaf, so dispassionate, that even traditional allies of the gun lobby said he did not speak for them. Conversely, electeds in D.C., including President Obama and others, stiffened their spine for once and called for publicly popular universal background checks, banning assault weapons and other common-sense measures. When the parents of Sandy Hook victims, many of whom I got to know well over the years, spoke with amazing grace of the impossible loss of an innocent child, even some conservative lawmakers, despite the pressures of the gun lobby, said as a nation the status quo could no longer prevail. At that moment, I thought finally the world superpower would muster the basic decency to make us not exceptional in protecting our children, but just marginal. I thought wrong, it turns out. We are an outlier in developed nations. We have more guns than people in America. We average more than a mass shooting a day in this country. And since that horrific day in Connecticut, we've allowed the vocal minority to implement looser gun laws, literally permitting in some states people to legally carry assault weapons in public. We allow armor-piercing bullets to be sold. We let people with protective orders against them and the mentally disturbed to still own a gun. We continue to allow a singular legal protection for gun manufacturers and distributors that personifies the lack of accountability that's synonymous with gun violence in America. But today wasn't just the latest dateline and a national disgrace we permit to persist. It was also a reminder. I remember the fear in my kids' eyes when we did our next drop-off when school did reopen. The school could not have been more thoughtful to the little kids who'd been forced to grow up in a hurry after Sandy Hook. But no words or assurances could undo what happened to students just like them only 30 miles away. This is America's reality. And for a nation who has been a global leader throughout its young history, who defeated fascism and freed a world, who developed cures for global diseases, who promoted and fostered democracies from the Atlantic to the Pacific, it is a pathetic punctuation to our newfound smallness that this problem is beyond our means. I always believed we were better than this as a nation, but I'm beginning to wonder if that optimism was misplaced.